people do this. Um, but I asked if people would listen if I said I'd post little video clips of me talking, and some people said they would. So I figured I could try and do something. I forget what I was going to talk about, but I had something earlier, and I was pacing around talking to myself, which I do a lot. I talk to myself a lot, and it's a little weird to sit down and talk because I feel like I have to be moving around to do it. Um, because I think it's easier to talk if your brain is already occupied doing something else. When I used to have a therapist, I would sit here, my camera would be right where you are, and I'd sit here and I'd draw, usually. Um, Sometimes I wouldn't really draw anything, I'd kind of just make strokes on the screen for as long as I could. Um, and sometimes that distracted me too much, so I kind of just stare off. Because I don't think you can really look at people when you talk either. It's something about trying to focus so much on someone where you can't think about anything else. And I think that same thing happens when you record videos of yourself because you're looking at yourself. People don't look at the camera, they look at themselves. And it feels like trying to make eye contact with another person. Because I think when you look at it, it's pretty much the same thing. It's still somebody's eyes. So you're still thinking about it. So I was never really good with recording myself doing anything. I feel like I sort of lose all of it as soon as I try. But I figured I would try. Um, Today I was thinking a lot about art, I guess. If that's the way to put it. Um, and putting art out into the world mainly. Um, or just being and existing and having ideas and being creative about things and having things in your head and trying to get those out places. I was thinking about it because I've gotten a lot of questions recently um, about myself, which I think my whole life I never really would have expected. I never really thought people would think twice about me in that sort of way. And I mean that in just a kind of, if you've seen it, it's just, where do you get your clothes from? What lipstick do you use? And stuff like that. And I have a lot more in my inbox actually that I haven't gotten to because I have a lot of stuff in there. It must be, I don't know how many, over 20, definitely more than 20. Um, at one point it was 40, so I think it might be more than that. But I've gotten a lot of things like that as of recent. Maybe it's because I've posted more pictures of myself. And I just thought it was interesting because I never really thought those things were very special about me. And I don't think that's really the point either way. Um, I just think it's interesting how people can get attention for certain things, if that makes sense. Because I was reading all those and I was thinking, why are people asking me this? I'm not, I don't know shit about this. Um, but I have a friend who's really smart about fashion and accessories and fashion trends and where to get things and stuff like that. She's very smart about it. She's a very smart person. And she writes things like I do, just different things. And she has different ideas about things. And so I was like, these questions should be going to her and not me, which is true and not true. I just thought it was really interesting how I kind of only matter in that aspect because other people know who I am. And that's the whole thing I was thinking about. How certain parts of people can look more brilliant or not compared to how out there they are almost. How many people know they exist? And inherently, that doesn't really diminish anything. That doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But it's interesting how we think it does, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Um, and I think about that sometimes when it comes to art specifically and kind of the stuff that I make and other people make, and even things like music, photography, other stuff, everything under the umbrella, I guess. And how, really honestly, a lot of people only think that those mean anything when it comes from someone popular or famous. And sometimes that's the only reason why people give me my flowers so often. Not to say that my work isn't important or that it isn't meaningful, because it is, and I know that it is. It's more of, there's so many other people who do things probably smarter than me, and it just doesn't get around as much. And I don't really know why it doesn't. People ask me a lot about how I get my stuff out there and how I got followers and people reading my stories and whatnot, and I never really knew how to answer that because I honestly don't know how it happened either. I don't think I'm any more brilliant than the average person. I don't think I'm any more brilliant than the average artist, honestly. Um, I think it's all really just a game of chance, really, because I have a lot of friends, mutuals, whatnot, and they are really honestly such brilliant people. But there's a lot of people who wouldn't take them as seriously as they would take me, for example. And I just don't really think that makes sense. I don't like how people tend to diminish the meaning of things based on if people are looking or not, is what I think. Because there's a lot of bigger artists, not even just like drawing wise, I'm talking like music mainly, um, who talk about similar things in their work and have similar themes and all of that. And people would take them more seriously than they would take me because they're more popular. And I don't really think it's a conscious thing that people do. I think everyone can find themselves doing it where they have to feel like other people are looking at it in order to let themselves feel something. Because when they feel it alone, they feel crazy. And I know this because even just myself, I get a lot of messages from people, um, and it always starts with sorry, or sorry if this is weird, or this is so weird that I'm sending you this, of people kind of apologizing in advance for connecting with things I do and things I write about. And I think people feel like that because it's so private and it's so individual. And I mean, me compared to, I don't know, who is a popular singer who writes about important stuff? I don't really know. But me compared to them, it's a big difference. Um, and, even then, like I said, there's even deeper than that, there's a difference between me and someone with like 100 followers, which is still really weird to think about. I don't really know how it happened. But, I had a mutual of mine actually say something really smart about this a while ago. And if you're watching this, hi, by the way, you know who you are with what I'm about to say. And I hadn't really thought about it before until they mentioned it, but people tend to take art like mine and theirs a lot less seriously than they would take other things because it's like little drawings of people on the internet, like OCs, basically, is what you know, you qualify it as. And people don't tend to think that that's a serious thing or something that means anything. Not because of what it's about, but because of the inherent thing that it is. But then you look at TV shows and movies and books, and it's the same thing. It's all the same thing, really, honestly. And I don't think people think about that. There really isn't a difference inherently, I think. People unconsciously seem to think that there is, but there's really not. Everything is still just characters and people and stories that you make up in your mind and you get it out there. It's just that people get it out differently. And people tend to take it serious or less serious based on what it is. Like, I don't really know if this makes sense, but and it sounds kind of weird to compare it out loud, but I think maybe you'll know what I mean by it. If you take me and Ethel Kane, right? And you're gonna look at me crazy and you're gonna say, oh, why is she comparing herself to Mother? And it's just this thing where people tend to have this inherent thought that brilliance correlates with how many people are there. And it sounds like I'm saying I'm better than her or something, I feel like, but I'm not. And that's not the point that I'm getting at. It's the point where two people can make somewhat similar art about somewhat similar things, but one can be looked at as smarter or better just based on how it is in the world. She's a songwriter and I draw little guys and I write stories about them. And to the vast majority of people, that's less serious. And the way I do it means that what I have is somehow less meaningful. And I don't think that's right.